Namaste. So we spoke about the priority number one, which is the safeguarding of the entire planet. We spoke about the priority number two, which is to safeguard the entire health management system in this country. We spoke about the priority number three, which is a better industrialization that is required to protect the planet and the people. We spoke about the priority number four in depth about how this prohibition actually violates all the fundamental rights of this particular citizens. Now let's talk about priority number five, why the great legalization movement is fighting for freeing and liberating this cannabis and cannabis-hemp plant completely from the Draconian Act of Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act of 1985, which is the agriculture, which is the farmers. No one really understands how difficult the life is for a farmer. The farmer has to work for months together and without seeing any profit or any kind of income that comes from this particular crop. Imagine you going to a job where you'll have to do a project for 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, you may receive your salary or you may not receive your salary, and everything is depending on the external circumstances. So if you're a farmer and if you have cultivated a particular crop, and let's say by the end of 4th month the rain doesn't come, the crops fail. And let's say there is some other invasion of pest and the chemicals that they're already spraying or they're overspraying or they're underspraying because they don't have money to invest in all of those things, and the pests take over the crops fail. And even if the crop is successful, the price returns for the farmers that comes for that particular crop is not guaranteed in this particular society. And there are only about 50% of the entire agricultural space that's available in India, which is actually having any kind of water resource, and the other 50% of the farmers is purely depending on the rain. And if there are rains, there is going to be an output, and if there is an output, there may be good prices for the crop, and he may survive that particular season. So the life of a farmer is very difficult to already begin with. Okay, India has roughly about 700 to 800 million acres of land, and about 50% of it belongs to the agricultural sector, where somewhere around 400 to 500 billion acres of land is arable. And there are lot of difficulties for the farmers that are continuing to rise since the time of independence, primarily because the climate is changing, and second of all, the family members within the own farmer communities, the sons or the grandsons, whosoever has inherited that particular piece of land, are not interested in agriculture. In the time of last 7 to 8 years, the amount of farmers that me has spoken to, the amount of villages that me has visited and try to understand the problems of what these farmers are going through, one of the major complaint that always comes is why the younger generation do not want to get into agriculture, and they're all moving to the cities to find better jobs, which is providing sustainable income on a monthly basis, and they don't want to do the hard work because they've seen their fathers and grandfathers suffer like anything. On the contrary, people who are in the city want to go to the rural settings and want to get into farming, but they do not have the lands or any other means to start this entire venture. There are a lot of commercial plantations in this country, and the problem with commercial plantations, now let's say if you plant a coconut tree, you cannot take any money. If you have 5 acres of land and if you plant 5 acres of coconut tree, you have to wait for 10 years for the first amount of money to even come in. So commercial plantations, which are of many different natures, are all long-term investments for someone who's already established. There are roughly about 50 to 55% of the Indian population who are directly or indirectly depending on the agriculture. That puts the entire numbers at somewhere around 600 to 700 million people who are depending on agriculture. Now, as the government of India, who have all the power to change anything in this particular country, One of the scariest things for me thinking about this agricultural sector is that how the Indian government has forgotten its own roots. What Bharat as a nation, what India was at the time of independence was an agrarian society. We were massively dependent on agrarian and agricultural based income. The numbers have diminished so much. And on the contrary, we have tried to balance it out by creating a lot of other economies. When people like Nandan Nilekani actually made a statement that like the future of Indian economy is going to be growing tremendously in service-based economy, I couldn't help but laugh because there is a certain amount of limitation to where that growth is going to go, and then it's going to get saturated. To really tell you where the future of Indian economy lies, it lies in the agriculture, because no matter how much service or technology that you can build, at the end of the day, everyone needs food to survive, and the lands are the primordial source for agrarian income. And why not gift the farmers one of the greatest crops? We have outlawed it, we have taken it away. Cannabis or the hemp plant was actually called as Indian hemp for at least 200, 300 years. And the world has forgotten that it used to be called as Indian hemp. They're just simply calling it as hemp right now. But me is trying to bring back the botanical appropriate name called as the cannabis hemp. Now, why cannabis hemp needs to be gifted to the Indian farmers? Anyone who's in the Indian government, listen to it properly. Uh, Cannabis is a superior crop. It produces the highest amount of biomass per acre as compared to any other crop in the shortest amount of time, which is around 4 months, not in terms of years that it takes for any other commercial plantations to grow. It provides the world's strongest sources of plant fibers. Some people even call it stronger than steel. And now these fibers can again have a lot of applications when it comes to textiles and other things, and it's much more superior to cotton because cotton as a crop consumes the highest amount of chemicals in the entire agricultural sector as compared to any other crop. And also cotton consumes 4 to 5 times more water than what hemp would require. Fourthly, the seeds that comes from the cannabis plant are one of the most nutritious seeds available in the plant kingdom. 33% of protein per 100 grams. That's a lot. If you want to eat chicken, that's about 12 to 15%. If you want to eat mutton, beef, whatever the meat that you want to eat, 12 to 15% of protein, as compared to cannabis hemp, which gives you about 33% of protein. So we can also eradicate malnutrition in this country in a great way. And fifthly, one of the greatest reason why cannabis is a superior crop is it produces a flower that is unlike any other flower in the entire world. What we call it as ganja, what the entire world misunderstands that ganja is merely just a drug, but we all have to constantly remind ourselves and also remind everyone else that ganja is not just a mere drug. It's one of the greatest medicinal flowers on the entire planet Earth. It has the ability to kill hundreds and hundreds of symptoms and diseases and illnesses that we all know of. So this in its entirety makes cannabis as a very superior crop. Now, if the farmer grows anything else like as a crop, if he grows sugarcane, he's only going to get only sugarcane as an output. If he grows rice, he's only going to get the rice as a harvest. But when he grows cannabis hemp, the farmer will be making money by selling the roots, by selling the stalks, by selling the fibers, by selling the leaves, by selling the flowers, by selling the separated seeds. So he has a multiple source of income. And each acre of land is so economically beneficial for even one single individual farmer that when we think about nationalizing this particular crop, nationalizing this entire agrarian economy to be rebuilt in India, which might take about 5 to 10 years if it is done right, we can become one of the leading global suppliers of cannabis and cannabis hemp products to the entire world. Now, again, you all must remember India is an agrarian based economy which we have forgotten, and also the entire climate is suitable because there are other countries which has much more larger agricultural land space available, but their duration of agriculture is very minimal, maybe 4 months in a year or 6 months in a year. But in India, we can cultivate anything throughout the year. We have 3 seasons, 4 seasons setups across the entire country. So this puts India in a very, very advantageous situation, unlike any other country. We have the land space, we have the manpower, we have the indigenous seed varieties, which are very, very superior. All the different kinds of cannabis strains that are available, all the different kinds of hemp for industrial cultivation that is available. And no one is tapping into any of this particular thing. So, and when you talk about the investment that it requires, it's practically zero investment for a farmer, because whatever he is cultivated, he might be taking a small portion of the seeds and recultivating in his own land, unless the government bends over and sells their entire Indian economy to companies like Monsanto or any other agricultural company who wants to create genetically modified versions of hemp. If that doesn't happen, and if the farmer is able to replant his own seeds, then the investment is practically nothing. And the farmer will not require any kind of chemicals to grow this particular crop, because cannabis hemp is naturally a pest repellent crop. The amount of water that is required is very, very minimal, practically none. That's the reason why, even without anyone watering any of these cannabis fields, right after you cross Delhi, as you're going towards Himalayas, you see cannabis plants growing across the entire Himalayan region, right from the lower valleys. So it doesn't require huge investment in terms of seed procurement, or in terms of chemicals that it requires to be managed, in terms of water, nothing. And the farmer gets 4 to 5 different kinds of harvests per crop per acre. So if we can somehow design a system where the farmers are the maximum beneficiaries of this particular entire hemp agro economy, we are going to transform this nation like no one else has ever done in the history of humanity to the farmers, because we are in the right setting, right geographical location, right available amount of land space, right available of human resource. Can you think about it? Over 500 to 700 million people who are depending on agriculture. Over 400 to 500 million acres of land that is available. We can provide the raw materials and resources that is required for the entire world to be rebuilt again. That's the power of cannabis hemp industrialization. That's the power of bringing cannabis hemp back to the agrarian economy. So, in my very limited analysis that is being done so far, which is happening for about 10 to 12 years, we are going to probably give anywhere between 300 to 500 billion dollars into the farmer communities for the first time, if it is done in a right way. Now, of course, a lot of big names, big guys, big companies want to come and encroach and try to monopolize this entire situation. And that is the one thing that GLM doesn't want to allow. Yes, they can also play, but we have to create a system in such a way and manner that the farmers always becomes the ultimate beneficiary of the cannabis hemp agrarian economy. So this is the priority number 5, why Great Legalization Movement India is trying to fight and already filed a petition in the Delhi High Court, filed in 2019. 6 years later, we are very close to the final arguments and maybe a judgment in our favor. And the Hope 2026 is a campaign that has been put forward by me as my final act for making sure that the plant gets liberated this year and no further delays. No, we don't want to carry the phase 2 of the Great Legalization movement, which is to liberate the plant, nowhere beyond this particular year. So I'm going to be putting a lot of energies into making sure that everyone is educated, the citizens, the politicians, the bureaucrats, the High Court, or the Supreme Court, whosoever it calls and it is required to liberate this particular plan. And you stay with me so that we can watch this entire transformation to occur. And if you want to take part in the legalization and mission, one of the most simplest things that you guys can do is to help us to donate about INR 2026, INR, that is 2026 rupees, to the organization to carry forward a lot of expenses. We have been self-funded for about 11 years, and there is no way for us to fund ourselves any further. So we are relying on the community donations. If you want to do that, you can visit www.glm.org/donate and make your contribution, fill out the form, and we are going to give you a lot of goodies. And tomorrow on the priority number 6, let us talk about how cannabis is going to impact the consciousness of the citizens, and how it enhances the awareness, and what is the spiritual connection with cannabis and uh, the human civilization. Right? Stay with me. Thank you.